Hello, my dear students. I'm Renalini Hirpathak from Ferguson College, and I will be teaching you Vocational Computer Science Paper 1 C++. To begin with, we'll have to take a quick revision of our 11th standard C++, which will include keywords, functions, etc. And then we'll move on to object-oriented programming. The review of our 11th standard C++. It will include tokens, data types, operators, control structures, pointers, array, as also reference variables, functions, function overloading, inline function, default arguments, and built-in function. Tokens. Now, what are tokens? These are the smallest individual units in a program. In tokens, we have keywords. Keywords are special, explicitly reserved words or names in the program that have a special meaning. For example, int, float, void, break, etc. These are all keywords in C++. Identifiers, these are the names that we give to variables, functions, and arrays and classes, etc. And we are the programmers, we create these identifiers. Rules of these identifier include that it should not start with a digit. It should always start with an alphabet. Uppercase and the lowercase are always distinct, and we cannot use a keyword. Now, constants refer to a value which is not going to change throughout the course of the program. It is always going to remain constant. For example, I've taken a constant float pi, which I've kept as 3.14. Now, throughout the program, this value of pi will not change. The next topic is data types. Data types are divided into three parts: the built-in data types, the derived data types, and the user-defined data types. The built-in data types are void, then integral. In integral, we have int, char, signed, unsigned integers, etc. And the floating data types will include float and double. The difference is the fractional parts are included in the floating data type. So 3 will be an integral data type and 3.3 will be a float. Derived data types include arrays, functions, and pointers. Finally, the user-defined data types include the class, the structure, the union, and enumeration. Out of this, class will be the topic that we'll be doing rigorously in 12th standard. Move on to operators now. We know arithmetic operators, which are plus, minus, multiplication, division, and modulo. Modulo, the percentage sign, gives me the remainder between two integer values, let's say a and b. Next, we have logical operators, where we have the logical and the logical or. We know this, we've done in paper 2 also in 11th standard, this anding and oring. Unary operators include the negation operator, which will negate the value of a. So if a is equal to 10, if I say minus a, it will become minus 10. Unary operators also contain the increment and the decrement operators, which are plus plus and minus minus. These comes in a few varieties, which is the pre-increment, that means plus plus a, post-increment, pre-decrement, and post-decrement. Mind you, these increment or decrement operator will change the value of that operand by 1 only. Next are the relational operators. We have equal to or equal to operator, which checks the equality between A and B. The exclamation mark and the equal to sign is the A not equal to B. Then we know all the rest of them: less than or equal to, greater than or equal to, greater than, and less than. Other operators also include the assignment operator. A is equal to B plus C. So the value of B plus C, the sum, will be assigned or given to A. The conditional operator, the insertion operator, this we have been using with all our cout statements till now. The extraction operator, this we have been using with the cin. So insertion operator will insert something onto the monitor screen, and the extraction operator will extract the value from the keyboard. It's the good way to remember it. The next one are the new and the delete operator, which are the memory allocation operators. New allocates a chunk of memory for the variable, and delete can release that chunk of memory. Endl, we've been using this with the cout statements. It's a line feed operator. It gives a new line. Whatever will be written after that will be presented on the new line on the monitor screen. The next one is the scope resolution operator. We will be rigorously using this operator this year in 12th standard now. The star, we call it as the dereferencing, which is used with the pointers. Ampersand is the address. The arrow operator will be pointer to member operator, and finally the size of, which gives size in terms of bytes. These are few operators. There are a few more which you can refer to later on. Next one is the control structures. Control structures are grossly divided into three parts: sequential, selective, and iterative. Sequential is one entry and one exit. So you start with the action, perform the second, next, then the third, and then you stop. For example, take two numbers, add them, and print them. So this is a sequential control structure in any language. Now we are studying C++. In the selective control structure, one of the two options are selected depending upon the answer of the condition. If the condition is true, then action 1 will be performed. If the condition is false, then the action 2 will be performed. If control structure in C++ is an example of the selective logic. Here, I've shown you the syntax. I have if and then the condition. So if the condition is true, then first set of statements will be executed. If the statement or if the condition is false, then the else part of if will be executed. Selection logic in C++ is also achieved using switch case control structure, but switch case is used for multiple branching where we have more than just two options. So how does this work? I've shown you the syntax, switch, and the expression. Expression is the variable or on which we are trying to find out the options. So case 1, if the expression is 1, then case 1 will be executed and the statement block of 1 will be executed. If case 2, then statement 2, and so on. After each statement, I have given a break. Break means it will break the block and come to the end of the switch case, which is the closing curly bracket of switch. If none of the cases are there, then switch case should have a default statement also. Here, default, break, and case, all three are keywords of C++. Iterative logic means looping. Looping means action has to be performed till the condition remains true. Once the condition becomes false, the loop is broken and we can go to the second action. To achieve this, C++ has for control structure. For control structure initially has the initialization part where we initialize the variable. Then the condition which tells me up to what point I need to reach, and the update, which means the increment or the decrement. Action is whatever action that I need to perform in that for control structure. Similar to for is while. While also checks the condition and then the action. One thing that we need to remember for while is the initialization part of a variable must be done before you start the while control structure explicitly. And the update, which is increment or decrement, should also be done explicitly before we close the while block. Do while is similar to while, but it's different in many ways. It also checks the condition, but it checks the condition in the end. So we call it as the exit control logic. Okay, so do these statements. If the condition is true, keep doing it. If the condition is false, stop. So in case of do while, this set of actions will be done at least once before we check the condition, even if the condition is false. Yes, a good question that is generally asked is the difference between the while and the do while control structure. So while is the entry control logic, do while is the exit control logic. While condition is checked first, statements will be executed only if the condition is true. In do while, condition is checked at the end, and therefore the statements will be executed at least once and then the condition will be checked. I've also given the syntax for while and the do while control structures. Next important and interesting point in C++ are the pointers. What are pointers? Pointers are basically variables in C++. What do? They point to address of another variable, and they hold the address of another variable. They all have data types just like variables, like an integer pointer will hold the address of an integer variable, or a character pointer will hold the address of a character variable. Syntax, when you declare a pointer, is data type. So data type could be integer, float, or char. Then the pointer name along with the star. Pointer name is an identifier that you can use here with any, say, AR, PTR or anything. Star is compulsory, mandatory, that tells you that it is a pointer. Each pointer variable must be initialized to address of some variable. Now here I've said integer I and a star PTR, which is a pointer, and PTR points to ampersand I, which means address of I. Arrays in C++. Arrays in C++, now here I have three important points. It's a group of identical data. They are arranged in sequential memory location under the same name. All 3 points are a must to remember and important. Identical means if all are integers, then it will be a group of integers. If it is a float array, then it will be a group of floats and so on. Then the next important thing is it will be in a continuous memory location and they will share the same name. What will be different will be the index of each variable. So syntax is something like this. The data type, again, it could be an integer, a float, a double, or a char. Array name is the identifier which you can use here. And then the size. Declaration of size of an array is mandatory in C++ at the beginning of your use of array. So data types, as I said, it could be integer or whatever. Array name, another identifier, and size is the number of element that array will contain. Initializing arrays, I've shown you that I can say int ARR of 10 and give 10 members or 10 numbers which will be part of that array. So ARR of 0 will be 10 and it will ARR of 9 will be 100. One thing to remember is index of array in C++ will always start with 0. So if the array is of n element, the last element will be n minus 1. Reference variable. Reference is interesting concept in C++. It refers to another name that is given to an already existing variable. So we have one memory location and two names, which is allowed in C++. Now, for example, here I've taken, suppose the memory location is 2000 and I already have a name called or a float called total, which has the value 100. Now I declare another variable ampersand sum, which is a reference variable, and I tell that it is referring to total. So that memory location will have two names, total and sum. So any change I make in total will be reflected back in sum. References can be used like function parameters as return values or even standalone references. The next important point or topic that we had learned in 11th standard was functions in C++. What are functions? Functions are block of code which run only when they are called. So functions can be used multiple times. You can pass data to a function which is called as parameters or arguments. Functions generally perform some action and they can return a value depending upon the answer when the action is complete. The syntax for a function is important. You have the return type, the function name, and the argument list. We'll start with the function name. It is the name, again, an identifier that you give to the name of the function. Let's talk about arguments or argument list or parameters. These will be the value that you will be passing from the calling function to the called function. And then let us look at the return type. It will be the value that will send back from the called function back to the calling function. So important steps while using functions are function prototype, function call, and function definition. Function prototype is a declaration, just like how you declare an integer. You say int I, so that your compiler does not give you an error when he finds I in the program. Similar to that, we have a function prototype, which is a declaration statement. When you want to declare, you should give the return type, the function name, and the argument list. So argument list will contain the type of arguments, that means integer or floats or whatever. The order in which, so if you have a typical order, say one integer, next one float, you'll stick to that order, and the number of arguments. So if you have 2 arguments, you should be passing 2 arguments. I've given an example here, float volume, int x, int y, and float z. Function prototypes gives, as I said, it gives details such as number of argument, type of argument, and the return value. So it's just a template which is used and the compiler will use when the function call is made. Function definition or function body. What actually has to be done in that function must be written inside the function body. So it contains the collection of statements that defines what the function does. This is a syntax for the function definition. Moving on to call a function. Calling a function when we actually need a function. Suppose we have written a function for area of a circle and I want it at some point in my program, I call the function. So that is called as calling a function. So we invoke it. So all 3 points, the function prototype, the function definition, and the function call are important. So once the function is called, the compiler's control transfers from the calling function to the called function. It comes back whenever it reaches the return value or we reach the closing bracket of the called function. Calling a function can be achieved grossly by 2 methods. One by passing a value and another one is by reference. When we call by reference, we can use either the reference variables or we can use the pointers. Next important point in our C++ 11 standard was function overloading. Function overloading is part of polymorphism in C++. This polymorphism will be a topic which we will be rigorously doing now in 12th standard. But just remember, function overloading is part of that polymorphism. It is used, overloading is referred to as something that we are going to do again or same thing for different purposes. So using the concept of function overloading, we can create a family of function with one function name. Now this is the important point, that the function name must be same, but the argument list must be different. Both the points here are very important. So I've given an example. We have same function name in function overloading. So I have taken a function name called area. Argument list should be different. Return types do not matter. So I've taken these functions. Just look at the first 3 or 4 functions here. Void area. The first one has nothing as the parameter, which means it's void. Next one has integer. Third one has 2 integers. Next is integer and a float. And then the area, float. If in case by mistake you make area 1, area 2, area 3, then this is not a part of function overloading. We need to have the same name for all the functions with different argument list. Next small but an important topic is default arguments. Functions can assign a default value to some parameters. So when we call a function, they may not have a matching argument in the function call. Always remember, only the trailing arguments can have a default value. For example, float, I've given the last line, float. Amount is the function name. Then I have sent 3 parameters. Float P is for the principal. Int period is for the time period for which you're going to keep the money in the bank. Yes. Float rate will be the rate at which we are going to get the returns. So here rate, since I have already declared it as 1.5, then the rate will have a default value. As I just said, always remember only the trailing arguments can have a default value. So if I have 2 in this particular example, I can have it for period and rate and not for principal P. Next one is the inline function. A function can be expanded inline when it is invoked itself. So I've given an example here. Inline is a keyword, and always remember inline function must be defined before they are used, or that means before they are called. Why inline? Why inline is because lot of time is wasted when we jump from calling function to the called function. Now if the functions are big, then this time which is wasted is justified. But if it is a small function, then this time is, we call it as wasted because this doesn't justify the jumps that we give from the calling function to the called function. Similarly, a lot of memory is also wasted in operating system because we keep the programs separately in the memory. So to avoid this, we can have an inline function, because inline functions are expanded when they are invoked. So they also help in faster execution of the program. Next, we have the built-in functions which are already there in C++. The first one is a put function. Put function is a member of the OStream class. Now remember students, we take #include IOStream in all the programs that we write. IOStream stands for input-output stream, which is a combination of OStream, which is the output stream, and the iStream, which is the input stream. Now stream means flow of data. So here the flow of data is from the program out to the monitor screen. Get function is a part of iStream class. It handles again a single character input operation. So it takes one character at a time from the keyboard into the program. Write is again a member of OStream class. We write something, but this time instead of writing single character at a time, write function can write a complete line of text onto the monitor screen. GetLine is another function similar to get, but what is the difference is, if get reads one character at a time, getLine function reads a complete line of text till it reaches a \n, which is the end of the line, and it can store that into a string value. GetLine can be used to read the line of text along with the spaces. We had also learned some string functions which were inbuilt in C++. First one was strlen, which is used to get the length of the string. The second one is strcmp, which stands for string compare. Of course, it helps us to compare the two strings. Then we have strcpy, which is used to copy one string to another. And finally, we have strcat, which is used to add two strings. So string concatenate, string copy, string compare, and string length. So these are the inbuilt functions. I have quickly covered the topics that we had in 11th standard. Let us look at one or two programs now. Write a program in C++ to find the factorial of a given number using a function void factInt. Now I've purposely taken this because in this we'll be learning how to use a function. In this, you can learn how to use a while control structure. You can obviously use the for control structure also at this point. Now to begin with, we have #include iostream.h, which is obviously, if you remember, we need it for the cins and the cout statements that you have in C++. Then we have #include conio.h, which is used for the two inbuilt functions clr_scr and getch. clr_scr stands for clearing the screen, and getch simply waits for us to enter a character. That means it holds the output screen for us. So clr_scr obviously should be at the beginning of the program, and getch should be towards the end. Always remember, compiler begins its execution at main. The third line, void factInt, is the function prototype, which tells me the return type is void, the function name is fact, and the parameter is integer. So void main. Remember one thing, void main itself is a function, and it is a function that we write every time for every program. Every program should have one void main or main function, and also remember, every program should have only one main function. So int n, I've taken an integer. So enter the number, means for the number for which we want to find the factorial. So that is n. Suppose I enter 4. Fact n. This line calls the above function, which is fact, and n is the integer that I am passing to it. Once I call the function, the control goes from the calling function to the called function. Here I have variables. Answer I've taken as 1, I as 1, and I will iterate this till I is less than or equal to x, which is n. So answer is equal to answer into I. So we should have 1 into 1, then 1 into 2, into 3, into 4. That will give me the factorial of a given number, and that will be stored in answer. As I said, in while control structure, we'll have to explicitly initialize the variable I is equal to 1 before we start the while, and before we end the while, I need to update it to plus plus. So factorial of a number which is 1 into 2 into 3 into 4 till we reach the number, I get the answer here. So factorial of the given number is the answer. In this case, if I've entered 4, I should get 24. Let's take up one more program. Write a program in C++ to implement a do-while control structure. Now here what I've done is I've taken 3 parameters, 3 integers, roll, P, C and M. I've taken an average float. I've declared a character variable N. So enter do control structure, enter your roll number, roll, enter your marks in physics, chemistry and maths. So C in P, C and M. Average will always be P plus C plus M divided by 3. Now we displayed your PCM average is whatever is the result. And then I say, do you wish to continue? C in CH. So here if I say yes, then the condition which says while CH is equal to Y, that is satisfied, and do loop will continue to iterate till I keep saying yes or Y. Once I use character N, or for that matter any other character other than Y, the do while control structure will stop and will come to get CH, and we can stop the iterations. So this is how, or this is where we can implement a do while control structure. In do while control structure, now if you see, the condition will be checked at the end of the control. Yes, my dear students, we have seen what we had studied in 11th standard in a quick glance. Next time, I would like to start with the object-oriented concept of C++ with classes, objects, functions inside classes, and so on. So see you then. Bye-bye.